Actually, I'm on the beach, obviously, and this is weird because the whole time I've lived here, and I've lived here since 89, sorry, I've never been able to walk all the way along here because the sea was always in at some point. You could never get from here to the breakwater without going through rock pools, and as you can see, it's completely clear. Look, there's hardly any water here at all. The tide is out. The tide is out so far, it is unbelievable. I've never been able to walk across here in my entire life. Anyway, just came down here. I don't know what, I came out for a walk. Got my coat on, but it's quite hot. But with all the weather patterns that we had last year, not last year, last week, when it snowed and the hailstones and there wasn't a cloud in the sky when it happened. We've had heat waves and all sorts of things just happen in one day. It's quite unusual. So I decided to come down here for just to do the opening bit for my video, because I did a video 4 or 5 days ago. My first video, I did a video a couple of months ago and it was banned, and it was a freedom of information request thing, which I can't show. I can't show it on YouTube because I'll just take it down, and I won't mention it, so don't take this one down. But the reason I'm doing this little bit at the beginning of the video is because Mandela Affected talked about a certain part of the anatomy that was changing slightly, and I agree with him 100% on that. So it might look like I copied him. I didn't copy him. I swear to God, I was going from my experience about my belly button. It's in the other, it'll be in the video, it's in the video, about my belly button sealing up, and I said something along the lines that, can't remember what I said, that there's a good chance that in the future no one's going to have belly buttons, and no one's going to have, and the way children are born is going to be different, or it's going to be non-existent in the conventional way. I think that's what I said. And it might look like I was copying off someone. I wasn't copying. I swear to God, it was just a weird coincidence. Anyway, I wanted to put that in the video first. I got no reason to lie. I mean, I don't put enough videos up to actually, you know, get fame or fortune or anything. And I certainly won't get paid by YouTube for the stuff I talk about, because most of my videos get banned. So I just wanted to put that up first. It's a coincidence, I swear to God. Okay, right. Give all credit to Mandela Affected. He had the video out first. This is just a coincidence, I swear. Okay. Right, on with the video, I think. I smell a honkin' jobby. Prick! Hi. I haven't done a video for a while. My last video was banned. Basically, it was the UK government talking about how the World Health Organization got everything wrong and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, it was a freedom of information request, but I will not talk about that because I don't want this video getting banned. I'm going to talk about something else. And I had it in my head before I was going to talk about it, and I've totally lost track. It was about my timeline. Actually, it was about everybody's timeline, but my timeline. See, in order to control the world, right, you need to eradicate history, a lot of history, and that's what's happened in a lot of these timelines. I mean, for a start, my history here in this timeline is different, but my memories of my timeline is still there. So that's not what I'm not getting into that. This is shit. Alright, let's do this again. Alright, let me try and put it this way. The reason why people act differently in every timeline is because their history is different. We know that. What's passed down from generation to generation is different from timeline to timeline. Therefore, people act differently. People have been lied to by governments differently. They've used different lies. They've done all this sort of stuff to control the people. You see, the important thing you've got to remember is that if everything's a lie, then you have no knowledge. And if you have no knowledge, then you've got no power. And if you've got no power, you can't fight back against the very people that want to control you, harm you, kill you, genocide you. It's all more or less the same. I'll give you a good example of this. See, in my timeline, there were a lot of groups of people that never died. Now these people, to be fair, these people never died in my timeline. So they lived. So their ancestors, they lived. So they passed down a whole heap of knowledge that's not available here, to be honest. It's not available in a lot of these timelines. These people survived. So first-hand knowledge was passed down from generation to generation, and there was books written about those people and about that knowledge, and these books existed in my timeline. Therefore, these books became fact, coming from hundreds of years old. These books don't exist here because the people here were persecuted in the past. I won't mention who those people are, but Christians will have an uproar if I did, especially American Christians. So I'm not going to say who they are, but I'll give you some examples. These are some of the books I read here. Forget the autobiographies, that's just... See this? Spells and how to use them. The Witch's Bible. An outline of occult science. The Essential, Rudolf Steiner. Common Sense and Lightworker's Way. Right. They're unusual type books because they're all modern. Well, except for the Rudolf Steiner. But his work is... it tends to be watered down quite a lot in this reality. He hasn't achieved half of what he achieved where I came from. And that's my point. You see, these are modern books telling you how things used to be in the past. Now, the truth in those books, most of it doesn't really exist. And some of it, well, see, it's modern. It's a modern take on history. Therefore, the modern take on history is, how can I put it? Bullshit. Where I came from, books, a lot of books were old. You bought a book, and the odds are it was from the 1700s, unless you were buying some modern writer's book. But I mean, most of the time, the books, if you wanted information on something, you'd get a book that came from that period, or a book from people who'd written from that period, or passed their knowledge down from that period. This is all modern stuff. This is people in the 40s, 50s and 60s trying to write about things in the 17 and 1800s without any knowledge, without any information being passed down. It's just their interpretation. Therefore, their interpretation is not knowledge. Not really. I mean, there's some truth in those books, but the only true truth out there is what's been passed down from generation to generation. And if a society doesn't pass down that stuff in one reality, then those people of that reality don't have the true knowledge. And if they don't have the true knowledge, they do not have the power. And if they don't have the power, then they can't fight back, which is what I said at the beginning of the video. So it kind of goes around in circles. The same can be said for science. The same can be said for religion. The same could be said for anything in some of these timelines. It's all modern interpretation of history. It's not actual history. In my timeline we had books on actual history. In this timeline you have modern interpretations of history that don't even match up as being accurate. And the only reason I know they don't match up as being accurate is because in every timeline the history is different. Certain events are different, and those certain events have an effect on everything that comes later. For example, I mean, even the smallest thing. If I wasn't doing this video today and I went outside, the odds are, you know, I would change the history in some way. It might only be minor, but I might run into someone who runs into someone who runs into someone, and suddenly the whole history is different. It only takes one small thing to be done differently to change the entire course of the future, or the present that we're in now, if that makes any sense. It's good in my head, I just have trouble explaining on camera. And then of course you get into all this sort of stuff like there's all this stuff like certain things that happen to you in life that you don't think much of in the past, but then in the present they come back to hit you in the face. It's like when the Mandela Effect first started happening, there was irrelevant stuff that I remember as a very young kid that never really bothered me too much, and I easily forgot about them until the Mandela Effect, until 2010, and we shifted from the Sagittarius Sam. Then suddenly I remembered this stuff because it was more relevant now than it was then. And it's like something or someone or something from the past made me see something then that I would remember now. Like this has all been set up. Each person is set up to live a certain... You go through your life living your life the way you want to live it, but certain things will happen that will push you in a direction that you need to go in order to find what you really need to find. You know, people will... When I was a kid, people used to come up and talk to me all the time. Complete strangers. You do that in this timeline and suddenly you're a child abuser. But in my timeline, people would come up to you and talk to you about stuff, and you wouldn't know what the hell they're talking about. They would just talk and rabbit on. You wouldn't understand any of it until you got older, and then you realise, were they put there for the specific reason to tell me what I needed to hear? Maybe not then, but later on. And this happens quite a lot. You go out here, you do something that is... Things will happen to you that need to happen in order for you to realise something else that's bigger. And that's what life is about. That's what you should try to look at life as. It doesn't matter if the world changes around you. You know it changes. The fact that you can remember where you came from and you can see the way the world is now, and it's a completely different world, it tells you that someone is allowing you to remember your past the way you remember it. Because your memories is basically what people are. I mean, I know it sounds very Doctor Who. I think Doctor Who did something on this, but what the hell, it's true enough. There's a lot of stuff in Doctor Who that I would say is not... When I was a kid, I just thought it was sci-fi. Now I look at it and I think there's some good truth in there. You know, amongst all the exaggeration and the sci-fi, there's some truth in there. I mean, my body is not my body. I had trouble with my intestines when I was a kid. I don't have trouble with them now because they're not the same intestines. My ribs are all different. I got extra ribs. I got my belly button's shorter. And well, here's a prediction I'm going to make. I don't often make predictions, but when I do, they're usually pretty good. My belly button is sealing up. the skin behind my belly button is going to seal up eventually. And you know why? Because I get the feeling that sometime in the future, in a timeline in the future sometime, we are not going to be producing children the way we do here. Because, well, we all know what the belly button is supposedly for, so that kids can breathe in the womb. If you don't have a belly button, then you're not going to be able to do that. Or at least, mind you, that doesn't explain why men have belly. Well, yeah, it does. Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking modern. I wasn't thinking way past. Yeah. Of course I've got a belly button because I needed to breathe in the womb at some time. But if my belly button disappears, then that would be a course of history. That would be a course that something's changing. Because if my belly button does disappear, then there's a very good chance I'm going to wind up in a timeline where people aren't going to be having kids the conventional way. That's what it seems like at the moment. My belly button could have skin behind it for other reasons. Maybe it's because, well, there's bone around there now, so it feels weird when I touch it. That's because of the ribs, obviously. So why has the body changed? I used to think the body had changed to adapt to the reality we were in, because of the toxins and all this sort of stuff. And I even had this theory that they put toxins in your body when they change the body. That way you become acclimatized to the environment that you're in. But obviously that's not the case. It's a bit more complicated than that now, because the body is obviously changing for an environment we're going to, not the environment we're actually in. Whatever it is, they're making a lot of trouble changing the human body in some people, and for whatever reasons doctors know about it, because I've confronted a doctor about it and he's gone white as a sheet. He thinks he's the only person who knows about it, and suddenly someone talks about it who's a pleb off the street, and suddenly he's retiring early. Yeah, my doctor retired. Oh, this is funny, you'll love this. My original doctor, was named after something you get on a hospital ward. Right? Now, when he retired quickly, they replaced this with another doctor with the exact same thing you'd find on a hospital ward, but they're not related. And I can't say what the doctor's name is because I think he did a paper recently and got into a bit of trouble for it. I'm not allowed to mention his name. But it was quite funny. It's just a weird coincidence, but it's not a coincidence. You replace a doctor. A doctor has an unusual name of something that you get in all hospitals around the world, and then he's replaced with a doctor with the exact same name that doesn't actually. That's an impossibility, especially when you find out what it's just an impossibility. It's a coincidence, but it's a coincidence that's sort of right in your face about something. Anyway, I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into hospitals because I've done a lot in hospitals in the past. My opinion is they're all genocidal maniacs at the moment. I saw things in my timeline with hospitals that were really bad. I mean, I saw a doctor murder someone in a hospital. I was in hospital a lot when I was a kid. There was I saw 3 people in a coma. Their machines were switched off in the early hours of the morning. I'd sneaked out of the hospital bed because I don't like hospitals. I'll tell you what hospital it was. I will tell you because the hospital's no longer here. I looked up online, it's gone. North Riding Infirmary. One of the worst hospitals in the history of the UK. And that's saying something. There was a lot of weird stuff. They experimented on kids in there and everything when I was in there. A lot of the illnesses I had later on in life was because of being there. I hated that place and I'm glad it's closed down. It was an evil fucking place. I've been in other hospitals. I was in North Tees. When I was in North Tees, it was a good hospital. It was actually really a good hospital. So not all my experience in hospitals were bad as a kid, but North Riding was one of the most awful places on the planet. And I've seen in every timeline how bad hospitals are getting. And in this timeline, genocide is the only word for it. Not just here in the UK, but all over. All over the Western world hospitals, all doing the same thing. I mean, they're either very uneducated, very stupid, or they just don't have any kind of consciousness. There's no other explanation for it. This wasn't going to be about hospitals, this was about history changing, but that's changed as well, so there you go. I wouldn't trust anyone. Let's put it this way, there's been a few times over the years when I thought I was seriously going to die, and I never went to hospital. I stayed at home. I thought, if I'm going to die here. Well, I'm still here, aren't I? And I'm perfectly fine. But I would never go to a hospital for any reason. If it got to the point where the pain was so bad, I would check out the way I want to check out, and that would be it. I would not. It's not like I've got anyone around here that's going to bother too much, you know. I have family just down the road, but, you know, unless it's something serious, I don't really see them much, so. Anyway, where was I? So that's all what I really want to talk about, was the fact that, you know, history changes and it has an effect on the present. And remember this, knowledge is power. So as long as you've got knowledge, you've got power. You can change things. But you can't rely on the history of where you come from for that knowledge to be real, because it's not real. It's different everywhere. I mean, although I say that in my timeline we had the knowledge of all this stuff, we did have all that knowledge. We had all these books of first-hand accounts on a lot of things. But who's to say that a lot of those people's interpretation weren't slightly off as well? That's my whole point. You have to do your own research. You have to educate yourself. That's the only way you're going to get, you know, true knowledge of what the world is like. And when you've got true knowledge, then you've got a bit more power. And when you've got power, you can change the world. But you can't do that with the so-called knowledge that you get from television, or the BBC or NBC, or I'm trying to think of an Australian one, ABC, which is basically BBC with Australians. It even has one of the very same presenters. A guy called, used to do Play School. What was his name? He used to think about Jemima going shopping. An Australian guy. What the hell was his name? Don Spencer. That was it. Now, between you and me, Don Spencer was a nice bloke. I met him once when I was a kid, when he used to do Play School in the UK. Nice bloke. Very honest guy. But my point is, he works for the BBC. Anyone who works for the BBC, or anyone who works for, is immediately under some sort of suspicion. Anyway, I'm not getting into my rant about the media, even though I know quite a few people in the media, and most of them are bastards. But no, we're not going to talk about that. Anyway, I just wanted to do a video because I haven't done one for a while, and to be honest, I am bored out of my head at the moment. Not much going on around here. I mean, we had, well, last week we had, was it last week or the week before? See, everything just merges into one now. It's just weird. Oh yeah, we had a heat wave. Not a cloud in the sky, we had a heat wave. And then suddenly, we had hailstones. Then snow. Okay, for the final time, because the camera's gone off twice already, I was talking about the hail, and the hail and the snow, the heat wave, the hail and the snow. There wasn't even a cloud in the sky. I was up at the cliffs. It was really hot, and then suddenly it was hailstoning. I decided to go home, and by the time I got halfway home, it started snowing. By the time I got home, it was practically dry. By the time I got home, I don't even live that far from the cliffs. I live about maybe a 15-20 minute walk, and that's me walking. I walk quite slow a lot of the time. It could take about 10 minutes if you were just an average walker. But yeah, that was weird weather, and that happened over. The first day it was very weird, and then the second day it seemed to be a bit more. It was still strange, but in Scotland we're kind of used to rain, sleet, snow, wind and all that in one day, but just the way it was here, it was a bit. It was too extreme. It was too hot, and then it suddenly was too cold. Then there was all this snow, and then there was a heat wave again, and it was just. It was just like two weather patterns from two different timelines in the one place at the same time. It didn't make any sense. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, so better head off. Ask me a honkin' jobby.